Check us out to hear the latest on life in the volunteer state. Yvonnca and her guests discuss everything from life, love, and business with a Tennessee flair.
It's a Tennessee thing.
Always relatable, always relevant, and always a good time. This is Talking Tennessee, and now your host, Yvonnca.
This episode is brought to you by the Landes team, your go-to real estate family in East Tennessee. If you are looking to buy or sell, we are the ones you should call. Give us a call at 865-660-1186 or check out our website at YvoncaSellsRealEstate.com. That's Yvonnca, YVONNCA, sellsrealestate.com.
Welcome back to Talking Tennessee with Yvonnca. I am your host, and I am here with a dear friend. His name is Dr. Alfred Degrafinreid. Welcome to Talking Tennessee.
Thank you for having me.
Most definitely. Well, he is with Leadership Tennessee, but he is so much more than just Leadership Tennessee, and y'all get to hear that. My first question is, who is Alfred Degrafinreid?
Well, that's a loaded question, but I'll certainly answer it. So I am a person who deeply cares about community.
Yes.
I benefited from being in the community, but I'm also someone who cares about convening and connecting. So I'm a natural born connector. I like to bring people together to solve tough issues. That's one of my favorite things to do, is to look at a problem and figure out how to solve it. I guess I'm just wired that way.
Yes. Well, I'll tell you this. When I met you in Nashville, what stuck out to me is when I walked up, you would have thought we knew each other because you are a connector. You immediately introduced yourself. I introduced myself, and we just started talking. And I think to be a connector, you have to be able to be approachable. And did I know who you were? No, I didn't know who the person is, but I knew I wanted to meet this person because I looked across the room and you had that look in your face. You were approachable. And so Tammy White speaks so highly of you. And I just wanted to see, okay, who is this person? And why is he so relevant to so many issues? So we're going to talk about it. So let's go back to your childhood. What was you like as a child?
Well, I was always accused of talking a lot. That's one thing that I think I have that's honest. It kind of runs in my family. I can vividly remember being a kid with my parents. They bought me a VHS tape, and the name of the movie was Don't Talk to Strangers, because I would go into Kroger and I would meet everybody in there and say hello and introduce myself, and they were like, you shouldn't be doing that. It's one thing to be nice, but you can't go around talking to strangers. Particularly as someone who loved candy. They thought that I would be like somebody could pull up and say, hey, you want some candy? I'm like, sure. And they think I'd hop in somebody's car and then be kidnapped or something. So they wanted to make sure I understood that everybody's not nice.
Yes.
And
that's a hard thing to accept as a kid. But I do think that, I guess the corollary to the story is, I'm the type of person who takes people at face value. I've never liked people to say, oh, I don't like that person, and you're not going to like them either. I don't want you talking to them. That's not how I operate. Me either. I'm the person, I want to, it's one thing for me to get to know you and then we don't get along. Right. But it's another thing for me to say, I don't want to meet you just because somebody else said that. You want to have your own opinion. Absolutely. Well, I'll say this. I'm from a small town called Harriman. It's about 30 minutes from here. And country girl, moved to Knoxville, I'll never forget. And you would think that's not a big thing, but coming from a very small town of 7,000 people to Knoxville, it was like a culture shock. And the one thing when I came to Bearden High School was, oh my God, she talks all the time. And so early in life, I was told not to talk. So I can relate to what you're saying, because people that, especially when you're young, they tell you not to talk and stay in a child's place and all the different things in our community. But if we don't talk, then a lot of rooms are going to be quiet.
a lot of people are not going to connect, and a lot of people will not be blessed. That's the way I look at it. And so I'm so glad that people did not cut your voice. But did you ever feel like as a kid that people wanted to cut your voice, especially being a black man, a young kid, and a lot of men need a voice, but a lot of men are not confident enough to use their voice. Did you ever feel like that as a kid, that people wanted you to cut your voice?
Well, I mean, I feel like that some days as an adult that people want to cut my voice, especially my wife. She's like, all right, I've had enough. Yeah. But I'm joking about that. But to be serious, my father was the type of person who always taught me, even as a kid, that you look a man in his face and you shake his hand, and it's certain things. He was a Vietnam veteran and truck driver as a trade, but he was just a very popular guy. Some would say he had to get the gab. So I watched him walk into places, and he would talk to everybody. But he always said, you got to have your own voice, and you have to stand for what's right, because if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. So it's a lot of different anecdotes that he would share with me as a kid, and things that my siblings and I talk about even to this day. My father's no longer here, he's deceased, but he would always say just different things, like a mouth will say anything.
Yes.
And that would be something that I'm like, well, Dad, this happened and so-and-so said this. He said, son, don't you know a mouth will say anything? And that would always go over my head, because I'm like, yeah, of course a mouth can say anything.
And you're like, what do you mean?
Well, what do you mean? It's like, just because someone said it doesn't mean it's true. Mm-hmm. You have to use critical thinking skills.
You do.
And you also have to, and I just want to pivot for a second because you made me think about this.
You're fine.
Kids, I'm an educator. I've done research, have my doctorate from Vanderbilt in higher education, leadership and policy. But the reason why I think it's so important when I mentor kids, particularly kids who come from the other side of the track in Nashville,
yes.
I like to talk to them and say that you have to use that voice. You have to ask questions, because if we're a community of people who we normalize not asking questions, then you're not helping the kids learn what they need to learn.
And you're not preparing them.
Not preparing them.
Because you have to be able to talk.
Right. And my kids ask a lot of questions, especially, my son, he tends to ask questions when we're eating dinner. Mm-hmm. And I say, that's great, because that's family time. We need to, when we're sitting at the table, you can ask questions, but I'm like, all right, you asked enough. Let's focus on eating this dinner. And
but at least you give them open conversation and dialogue to really talk about what is going on in their life.
Yes.
And and talk about things that they can ask you about that they don't understand. Mm-hmm. Because I think a lot of times when we were kids, there's things that's said, because I know one thing that my grandfather said to me that stuck with me, and I tell everybody this. My grandfather said to me, when you die, what will be your legacy? And so as a kid, I was like, what do you mean? Mm-hmm. Legacy? What is that?
Right.
But the older I got, and the more I got to get exposed to different things, I realized it was about making a difference. My grandfather was an educator, very first black principal in my hometown, very first black in a lot of different fields of education. And my grandfather believed in, building up a legacy, building up your community, making a difference, and coming outside of yourself. I tell my family all the time is that, okay, so we do things for each other. That is not a thing of, yes, it's great and it's easier to do for your family, but when you come outside your four walls, what do you do outside your four walls that's going to make a true impact? And so that's probably what you were trying to figure out through life growing up as a black man. And where did you come from?
Memphis.
And what was that like as a kid, living in Memphis?
Well, I think Memphis is such a remarkable city, and I'm not just saying that because I'm from there. The culture, the context of what I do for a living, which we'll talk about later, I get to see various pockets throughout the state, and I think that Memphis, it has its fair share of challenges like other cities, but the culture there,
The
you
food.
can't find it anywhere else. The food,
The
and it's
shopping,
really
too.
I mean, it's a lot of stuff to do in Memphis, and it just seemed like growing up it was a lot hotter outside than it is today. Because I mean, I would have a lot of nosebleeds growing up because it's so humid.
Yes.
Right on the Mississippi River, and it'd be hot outside. But I tell you, growing
Every
up,
time I've ever been, it's been hot. But it was worth it because the
food is great.
best shrimp and grits I've ever had in my life came out of Memphis.
Well, I'm sure it's a lot of things
Yes.
out of Memphis. But I would say this other thing about growing up in Memphis, it's kind of like that. You see the Memphis Grizzlies, they talk about grit and grind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Memphis is a gritty, like everybody is trying to really figure things out. You can go to Memphis and be like, oh man, I'm in Memphis. I just love to be in Memphis. But I visit. I don't live there.
Right.
I've been gone for over 20 years. But I do like to go back home. But it's such a remarkable place. And I think that it's misunderstood in a lot of ways. One of my favorite things that I like to ask questions about to people that I expose to Memphis for the first time, they always say, I avoided this place. I didn't want to come. And
I think media gives Memphis such a hard, I don't know the word for it, just experience. What the media says the experience would be like to go to Memphis, I think that it's not a fair shake.
Right.
In the media, because a lot of times that people think that the crime is just so bad and everything is so bad, but we got crime everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's be clear that every city has crime, but you got to go to a city and figure out what is the best, things that you can do and the experiences. And I think that you coming out of Memphis, you're a success story. You've done so many great things. So as a young man, how did you get on the community path?
Well, I'll be remiss if I don't mention this thing. Even though I grew up in Memphis,
Mm-hmm.
my mother is from Tipton County,
Okay.
and that's just north of Shelby. She's from a little small town called Drummond's, Tennessee. You may have heard of Covington. Like that's the big city in Tipton County. But we have about 250 acres there.
Okay.
And my grandfather had
So you grew
animals.
up on a farm.
Well, on the weekends we go. I love to see the bulls.
Oh,
and,
wow.
you see chicken and roosters and, different animals around. I can't imagine growing up and not being exposed to that. Like if you want a peach, let's go out there and get it. You want an apple.
And I think kids nowadays, they don't get those experiences, because I know when I was a kid and probably when you were a kid, we rode bikes,
right.
We were outside. The biggest thing was my mother used to say, "Don't let the traffic, the street lights
come on.
Yes,
get you home.
yes." And so we enjoyed being outside versus kids nowadays don't enjoy that. But that's what we enjoyed and had a great time, and that was community.
Yes.
If you think about it,
Yes, it
was. That was our first building block to community. Your church upbringing, and when you play sports or when you're in different groups and academics. Tell me, what was that like as a kid?
Well, the most apparent one is to start off with church.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up in the CME denomination, Christian Methodist Episcopal.
Okay.
And
I grew up Methodist.
And it's very small church. Actually, before that, this is interesting for this story. I go back to the first church I remember was a United Methodist church. And it was, I remember going as a kid, and for some reason that church closed. And then we joined another church, and it was, I think at the time, the first time a black congregation and a white congregation joined together.
Okay.
So that was a unique experience in the probably late 80s, early 90s. And it was a very great mix. But we ended up going to CME Church after that, Christian Methodist Episcopal, and that's when I really had the opportunity. Like it was I never missed an opportunity to lead the scripture, to lead the prayer. I sang in the choir. My mom was the usher president. So I was on the usher board.
So you were truly involved.
Oh, absolutely. She taught.
Do you remember
Sunday
the usher
school.
board when we were growing up?
Yeah.
Usher board was serious.
It's serious.
Yes.
You
Kids
know?
that have no idea. And you had to truly, behavior had to be on point in church. Yeah. You didn't talk in church. And you didn't get to eat in church either.
Right. There was no iPads.
No, it was not.
So I could see my mom right now. She could just look at you and tell you to straighten up. That's the type
of person
she
look.
And she taught school. So, it seemed like the church really, all the school teachers had to also teach Sunday school. So as a result of her teaching, we had to be there too.
Yes.
So we were in church all the time. But I think even leading up to this point, the reason why I'm comfortable in front of a microphone is because I had those experiences. Like, I looked forward to Black History Month because we had to do a report and go before the church and talk about Black leaders and what they did. I always look forward to my Easter speech.
So your parents exposed you
Absolutely.
At a young age at speaking in front of people.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we don't realize that we got prepared by things that our parents made us do that we really didn't want to do at the time and didn't understand why it was important. But it really instilled great things in us before we even knew that. Mm-hmm. So let me go back a little bit. So you're married.
Yes.
And you have children. What is your wife's name?
So my wife's name is Tiffany.
Tiffany.
And, if someone asks me how long we've been married, I always say not long enough.
There you go.
So that's a good tip.
That's a good thing. You did real well.
Someone shared with me, former colleague shared. She was like, I heard this amazing person say, not long enough.
There you go.
And that's a good answer. But we were married in 2012, so we've been together for quite some time now, and just fantastic. She's a social worker.
Okay.
She works for the Department of Veterans Affairs, and I call her a socialite as well because we do a lot of events in Nashville. She's co-chaired some highfalutin events, and we're actually co-chairing an event in a couple weeks at the Skirmahorn Symphony Center, and we also are co-chairing the Library Gala, which is a big deal in Nashville too.
So you married somebody that shared community.
Yes.
She's all about community.
Absolutely.
Like you're, and I think that to me, you have to, in marriage, I feel like you have to evolve together and you have to build together. To be a community leader, I feel like that a really great community leader always has, a spouse that is supportive, cheers them on. That a gentleman told me years ago, older gentleman, he said, behind every powerful man, you'll see a strong woman. And I believe that, and vice versa. Is just, you gotta have a cheerleader and someone that will challenge you. Does your wife challenge you to do more in the community or do certain things in the community?
Well, I wouldn't say that I lack in that area. I think I'm probably overextended.
She probably says you need to stop some.
But I can tell you some things that I've noticed over the years. She claims to be an introvert. I don't know if she is or not, but she says she's an introvert.
Yes.
But she really wasn't a person who did a lot of things in the community. Mm-hmm. And so but she would do things, but she wasn't like on a lot of boards and things like that. But she was great at doing these things. She was like, oh, I'm okay. I want to focus on
Did you help her find her way into that? Because the reason why I'm saying that, because David was the same way. David is an introvert, and he's coming out of that shell. And like even now, David is, getting involved in more things, that type thing. But I've literally said, I challenge you to do this or challenge you to find your way in whatever is going to make you happy in the community. And I can honestly say David's blood drive really was what opened up for him because he could relate to that.
Right.
He knew he needed blood. He knew the community, came and gave blood, donated blood for him. And so David could relate to that and he took off.
Right.
Is there a thing that you could say, hey, maybe this was the thing that got her to like that?
Well, I would just say that, both of us have been in Greek-led organizations for a long time. So
in public service.
So like we would get a lot of our volunteer work through that.
Right.
But I think my favorite moment is I serve on the Convention Center Authority in Nashville, which is a great
organization.
a great board to
Yes,
serve
yes.
on. It's appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the city council. And the mayor appointed my wife to the sports authority, which is, I was like, man, that's great. Like, I mean, convention center is great too, but sports authority, like they're building a new Titan Stadium.
Yes.
You know, every sport team is a part of the sports authority. So she loves sports. So like,
That's a good thing.
she looks forward to going to those meetings. Like,
Right.
so I think the disconnect for some people is that you may go to a meeting and people may not be nice to you. They may be rude, or the meetings last too long, and it may not seem like it's a value add.
Of your
But
time.
I've probably been on 25 boards over the last 15 years. So I've done multiple boards, but I really like the boards that are, quarterly.
Yes.
Because I can, kind of condense it and get the work done, and I don't have to go every week or two.
And you feel like you're making an impact.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But I like to drive my work through things I'm passionate about.
Okay.
So like, for instance, I volunteer at a school just to help mentor fourth grade students who aren't on reading level and come from a zip code in Nashville that if you're born in that zip code, you have a higher likelihood of being incarcerated than anywhere else in the country.
Wow.
So when I look at these kids, I think of myself, like I grew up in that type of environment. So, but I had a structured pathway because my mom's a school teacher.
Yes.
So like I didn't have any big issues on learning things because my mom was there.
You had discipline.
And I have older siblings. I'm the baby.
Oh, okay.
So like
I am too.
I really think about I can remember my oldest sister. She really helped me with a lot of homework. And my mom, she poured into a lot of the students. So a lot of times she was like, go ahead and get your sister to help. But when it was necessary, like with multiplication, I remember that was a tough subject for me. It was hard for me to get that memorized, and I even struggled with some long division. But outside of those two things, I've always been great at numbers. So once I mastered it, I got much better. So I think about we think about that when we raise our kids. We have two kids, Alfred III and Chancellor Joel, and we work with them. We give them extra work to do. And instead of being outside playing or just being in the camp, we're going to embed certain things. Like when we travel anywhere, like we spent a week in New York for spring break. And of course, they like to stay in Times Square. So their experience of going to New York as kids is different than mine when I was growing up. But we got a chance to do just remarkable things. And we've been twice with the kids, but we also built in a visit to Guggenheim. We built in a visit to the Met. Like we want to make sure that even though we're somewhere else, you get to see the arts, you get to see the sciences. We want to make sure that you're exposed to everything. I taught them how to ride the subway, which was a challenge for me because I've always ridden the subway, but I couldn't understand the subway the same way I can understand riding the metro in DC. So now that I understand how to ride it, it's very easy for us to get around. I want them to see that public transit is not a bad thing.
Yes.
Just because we live in a city where it's not as much ridership on the buses doesn't mean that people shouldn't ride the bus.
Right.
The more traffic you have, you think that more people would ride the bus.
And Nashville has traffic.
We have some traffic.
Y'all have traffic.
And so does Knoxville.
Yes, we do. We do.
Kind of at the split where it comes together.
Yeah, but ours just really got bad like in the last 3 years. The one thing about Nashville is y'all's traffic has been that way for a minute. But Knoxville's...
You ever been to a UT game?
Yes.
Let me tell you, that's some serious traffic too.
Yes,
The UT
it is. Getting to the game is, I hate to say it,
but
it's a headache.
It's a fun experience.
But once you get there, though, you have a great time. And then leaving, it's like unbelievable. But I would not give that up for anything. Go Vols. So let's get back to the community part and your leadership. What made you decide to get your doctorate?
Well, I was working at Vanderbilt. I was an associate vice chancellor, and I did all the community relations for Vanderbilt, and I did all the local government relations. So I was there, and I was like, well, I already have a terminal degree. I got my law degree in 2012, and I just kind of felt like I always wanted to be back in education. Like I was an elementary education major at first, and my mom convinced me not to do it. She said, I know you're passionate about education, but I want you to get a career that you can make some money. I don't want you struggling like I did.
I bet you she was so proud for you to become an attorney, getting your law degree and all that. I bet you it was like a proud moment for her.
Oh, it was absolutely a proud moment for that one too. But I think it was like I learned about adverse childhood experiences when I went to Leadership Tennessee in 2019. I was like, what are ACEs? They kept saying ACEs. I said, what is that? And I started thinking about just the area I grew up in, things that just happened to people. I'm thinking like, man, this is kind of crazy that people experience things. Like I lost my father at 14. And
Wow.
It was one of those things where I knew that I could either go and do some things I shouldn't do, or I could go and be positive and continue on this trajectory. And I chose that way, but I had positive reinforcements. I have older siblings. My oldest brother was very instrumental in making sure that I stayed on the right track and right path. And so that thing was very important to see that. But to answer your question about that, I asked my mom one day, and she said, I'm just be honest with you. You turned out a lot better than I expected, just given the adversity that you experienced as a kid, and that really touched me.
And losing your father at 14 years old, because
age.
you could have went down the wrong road very easily. So how long was you at Vanderbilt?
So I worked at Vanderbilt for 3.5 years or so, a little under 4. And then I transitioned to Leadership Tennessee, which has been a great thing. But you asked me about education. So one of the fringe benefits of working at a university is that they give you a discount on schools. So I was like, well, I already have a terminal degree, but I would like to focus in on something that I'm really passionate about. And I was passionate about government relations too, and just being a community person and looking at metrics and how do we lift all boats and focus in on areas. And Vanderbilt's a great institution.
Yes.
It has rich resources. And a lot of times they'll go into the community and say, we're not going to come in here with a savior complex. Right. We want to come in and say, how can Vanderbilt help the community if you all want help? And that was a very great job to see how a huge institution like that can go and transform different communities.
Yes.
In a lot of ways. And that really opened my eyes to a lot of things. And I get to see a lot of the same stuff now in this current role as well.
Well, viewers, he jumped over this. He said he went through the class. What year of Leadership Tennessee?
2019.
2019. That's impeccable for you to become the CEO of of a organization that brings community, brings connection, helps build up your community. You went to that class, came out of that class, and God got you into being the CEO. What was that like?
Well, it was interesting because my predecessor is someone that I adore. She did such a great job at Leadership Tennessee.
Let me go back for 1 second. Was it a goal to be that?
It was not.
Please tell us how that transpired.
Gotcha.
Go ahead.
So my predecessor, she sent an email out, and the email said, I'm basically will be departing from Leadership Tennessee in a few months. And I immediately got on the phone and I was like, oh my God, Kathy, I said, what's going on? Like, this can't happen. You did such a great job at Leadership Tennessee. I can't believe that you're going to leave. She said, well, it's so interesting you called me. She said, actually pass your name on to the board chair, somebody who's been active, who participates in everything. And I was like, oh no, it's no way. I said, nope. I said, it's no way. I'm pretty sure that this small nonprofit is not going to be able to meet my salary requirements. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, just let the board chair know I'm not interested.
Okay.
So a few months went by.
So you told Leadership Tennessee you was not interested.
I wasn't interested at first. I mean, I was interested, but this is the deal.
But you didn't think that they can meet, your requirements, and you were in a good position.
Right.
at the time?
I mean, Vanderbilt was my dream job. It was
Okay.
like, it was nothing. I didn't think I would do anything else outside of that because I really loved doing the work. Like, but this is what happened. A few months later, they had a session in Clarksville, actually at Fort Campbell,
Okay.
where we got to shoot machine guns and rappel and, you know, get to meet the commanding general. And I did one of those activities, and I was like, wow, I really miss this. This is something great. I mean, had I not done that, I probably would not have applied for the job. But I was like, you know what? I miss learning things every single day. As a government relations person, a lot of the work that I would do on campus would be, you know, figuring out how to reroute alleys and, you know, go before the Board of Zoning Appeals, things you're probably familiar with.
Yes.
And sidewalks and imploding buildings and making sure permits are there. So, I mean, that nuts and bolts of the government relations piece, I could do it with my eyes closed. But I was like, you know, I really want to be at the forefront and get a chance to learn things the way that I felt I wanted to do again. I'd already done statewide work on campaign work, so I'd already been to all 95 counties, and I just really enjoyed the assets across the state. Like, you go to Knoxville is like, Knox County is different from the county that's right next door. Like, as soon as you step across the county, it's different. So you think about all 95 counties, you have a different issue per county that's not like your neighboring counties. And then you think about like just the regional aspect. Like, a lot of people don't understand that East Tennessee is more than just Knoxville. Some people think that that's all to East Tennessee, but we have Tri-Cities is totally different, and they have that regionalism thing that happens a lot.
I agree.
And you think about like going to Memphis and Nashville and Chattanooga and Knoxville, and you just really get to learn like, these are the things that are happening. This is what's happening that's working well, and here's some things that we need a little improvement. And because my mind is like that, I'm always trying to figure out a solution to things. I was like, this is a job I want to do. So I applied for it. I probably got my application in very late, and I interviewed for it. And as soon as I got to the interview, I was like, set, this is the job I want to do.
So and it took you to get to the interview to figure out that that's really what you wanted to do.
Right. That's exactly how it happened.
And so the biggest thing with that is, a lot of times, you know, we never, we get things that we never thought about. And I think that's a God thing, because you're sitting here saying is that I was at my dream job. I was happy. You know, everything was going great, but God had a different plan for you. And I think the biggest thing is that, well, I don't know, have you ever done nonprofit before leadership?
Not running one.
Okay.
But I've been board chair for several. But so it's a difference.
It's different, you know, it's totally different.
Let me explain this quickly.
Go ahead.
Like, Vanderbilt University is a nonprofit too. But it's more of a corporate nonprofit. Correct. Now, when you go from that, I had a pretty decent sized staff and I managed 4 programs. Then you go to a small nonprofit where it's only 2 people.
Yes.
And then finally we expanded again to get to 3 employees again. So all of us do the same work, and it takes a special type of leader to understand that. My rule is I always say that I'm not too good to grab a broom and a dustpan. I'm not too good to mop the floors or clean the toilets. Like,
gotta be able to
the work has to get done. And I think that as a leader, you really understand, like, you have to show your team that you're in the trenches too. Like, even though I have the title of president and CEO, I handle some social media as well. I work on newsletters. I handle the budget. You know, I work with my board. But I mean, all of it's connected. So it's not like one person only does one thing. All of us do everything. Right. And that's
you're a team.
That's a great thing. And I always say this. If my team were listening right now, they're gonna be like, okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. He's about to say we punch above our weight class.
There you go.
And that's what we have to do. And I think we do it well, but there's always room for improvement, no matter what.
So tell the viewers, what is Leadership Tennessee?
Okay. Well, Leadership Tennessee is the premier community leadership program in the state of Tennessee, statewide program.
Okay.
We're a nonpartisan group of individuals. We convene leaders to take them through an immersive experience where they get to see the different parts of the state, and they spend 24 hours or so together in 7 pockets of the state in a 10-month period. That's our signature program. And it's really not one of those things. It is for established leaders. Like, that's our main program. It's the signature program. So you have to be an established leader. So we're exposing them to different parts of the state. It's not necessarily, I'm trying to teach you how to be a leader and I want to run a diagnostic on you and figure out, your leadership style. Most people have already done that.
Right.
Like, you're already a leader before you get there. Now we want to expose you to different things that are working different places with the ultimate goal of being able to share ideas. Because it could be something in Harriman County that you all solved 20 years ago, and then you have, let's say, Fayette County
Yes.
and West Tennessee, and they may be dealing with the exact same issue that you all solved. So if you get those 2 people in the room and they connect, then they can say, well, let me tell you how we fix this issue.
Exactly.
And the ultimate goal is to improve our state. And we're nonpartisan. We're not political. It's impossible to not have conversations that are political adjacent.
Right.
But we don't take stances on anything. The class members are the ones who have those conversations. And we take them through that process. And we just actually today, a couple hours ago,
Okay.
we graduated class 11. And we finished in Merville is how you pronounce it, Merville. We finished there, graduated them today, and a few of us went on Blackhawks through the Tennessee National Guard, and it was a fantastic experience.
I think they flew over my house.
I'm sure we did. So it's a difference in doing that in Paris, Tennessee, because the terrain is different. Like, to fly over Neyland Stadium,
Oh.
and to see that, and to see the TVA building, the UT administration building, I noticed.
I know that was a great experience.
It was fantastic to see that. I didn't realize how many people in Knoxville and surrounding area had pools. I mean, it seemed like looking down, everybody has a pool here. But also the water is very important here.
It is.
We know it's a lot of people who like that. The lakes are nice. So but that's our signature program. Then we have a LT Next program, which is our mid-career program, which is geared towards, it's not really an age requirement, but it's typically ages between 25 and 45. And we do embed more leadership principles there. I do a few trainings on change management and how to handle difficult conversations, things that would be beneficial that I think I would have had when I was 25 years old. What would have helped me get to the next level? So we, though that's about half the time. We run 2 programs a year, so it's 4 sessions with theirs, and it's 30 people that go through that program every 6 months.
Okay. So let me ask you this: if there's a leader that wants to pivot in their career at whatever age, what would you say? What advice would you give them if they were in that position, if they wanted to pivot? Because that's basically what you did.
Right.
You were at a job that you truly loved, and you went after a job that you really didn't want at first, but then your desire of it after you came through the interview process of it, that was your dream job too?
Oh, absolutely. I would say that, I have a strong faith system, and you have to pray about things. And if you have that relationship, you have access to go on to pray about it. I mean, I just think about 2 things happen. Sitting in the room with my wife, and I brought it up several times. I'm like, I'm thinking about applying for this job, but I don't know. I said, I can't take that kind of pay cut. Thinking about applying for this job. Then I started pivoting to saying, I think I would be happy doing this kind of work again, statewide work.
Did y'all hear what he just said? Happy.
Right.
And
let me say it, I was happy at Vanderbilt too. But I was like,
it's a different happiness.
It's a different happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the other part too that I hope that the listeners will take away from this. I have been a very good number two.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think I'm built to be a chief of staff or a number two person because I don't have to be in the front. I love to manage things, so
Yes.
but don't take it out of context.
Right.
I love to be in control of a situation if I'm afforded the opportunity. But
you're okay with being number two.
I love it. I love for somebody else to have to deal with all that stuff.
Viewers, did you hear that? That's a strong statement. I don't think I've ever heard anybody explain it that way. You know, you hear people say, oh, well, I don't have to be in the front. I don't have to have the attention. I don't have to have this. But that's not what you're saying. What you're saying is, I'm okay being number two as long as everything works together for our good and everybody around. That's what I'm getting from you, is that it's not even about the attention part of it or whatever. And I do think, let's go back a little bit of when you said you've always been a talker. You've always had that gift of gab, you know, and most people think that people that have the gift of gab always wants to be in the front. But a lot of people don't realize is a lot of times we want to step back a little bit, but if we don't got it, it will be dead silence.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in your community, you've got to have people that are okay with being number two for the greater good. And if they're number one, that's okay too.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that. And I'll say that it's, you know, the buck stops at the person who's in control a lot of the time. So like when you're number one, you have to fall on the sword sometimes for your team. Sometimes, and I mean, this is whether I was leading this organization or in other leadership positions. My background has been in politics and in government. I have worked for a lot of elected officials, a lot of great leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm natural with being a number two, because if your name's on the door or you're on the ballot, you're the person who's sacrificing, who's running for office.
Correct.
I'm the person that's gonna make you look good and make your life a little easier. So, but the point of the whole story I just gave there is that I just had the desire to just figure out, can I lead an organization?
Mm-hmm.
I want to know, like, I know I can do it,
Mm-hmm.
but I've never put myself out there, because people who know me very well will say, he loves a microphone. But let's go back to church. The reason why I love a microphone is because I don't mind welcoming guests. It's not that the attention is on me. It's let's do that.
It's not about the attention.
I really get uncomfortable with
I
a lot
think
of
a lot of
attention, too.
people don't realize when you're an extrovert that extroverts get tired of being, you know, that person that is always speaking and always, you know what I'm saying? And just because you're good at the microphone doesn't mean that you always want to be on the microphone. And what I'm hearing from you is I'm stepping up and using my voice because I want to make change in my community, and I know that I have to be that voice to say, hey, let's work together. Like with your staff, you're sitting here saying, okay, it's 3 of us now, but we all work together. So if that means I got to go sweep the floors, if that's what needs to be done, we'll work together for the team, and we're all going to do well at it. And I think a great leader has to be that way, is being able to move around where it's needed.
Right.
The biggest thing that I think that leaders have to understand, if you're going to be a great leader, is it's where you're needed. What do I do when there is something lacking? I have to step up to the plate and be that leader and get it done. That's what I'm hearing from you. And I think a lot of times you need mentors. So my next question to you is, what role has mentorship played in your professional journey, and how do you continue to pay it forward?
Wow, now that's my favorite question. I mean,
Okay.
I have a personal board of directors that I don't make decisions that impact me without talking to them first. And it tends to be, you're going to love this because you're a business owner. People who are business owners,
Yes.
they can make some good decisions, because a lot of times the decisions they make impact payroll and somebody else need. So like, I love talking to people who are used to that type of pressure. Because I've never, run a business that I created myself. Right. So one of my mentors I talked to about this opportunity, and she told me, she said, Alfred, you would be crazy not to take this opportunity.
Well, to her, I said, thank you.
And I was like, well, and I don't want this to come off in case one of my board members thinking like, well, it seems like he didn't want. No, I was skeptical about whether, because really, if I'm being honest, like I always am, and I'm gonna take it there, I get in trouble for that all the time. I was told by one of my mentors, and she meant well.
Yes.
She told me that I should not apply for this job because Leadership Tennessee would never hire a black person to lead it. And because I've worked for Democrats all of my career, it's no way that an organization like this would really give me a fair shake. And that made me think. And it was no malice or anything.
No.
She was just being a great mentor, telling me how she felt.
True and transparent.
Right. And so when she told me that, I was kind of thinking, oh yeah, well that's kind of what, I'm not going to go after the job. But then but see, that's why you have more than one mentor.
Yes.
And when I talked to a few other people, they were like, oh my God, you should absolutely do it if you can afford to take that kind of pay cut. And it was so interesting because when I sent her the press release as a new president and CEO, she called me and said, you know what? I was completely wrong. And I know that
That's a great mentor.
She said, I know that you're going to do an awesome job.
That is a great mentor. Because even a mentor can be wrong.
Absolutely.
You
So moving to paying it forward, when I was a law student in Indiana, I'm a Kappa too, so I went to Indiana University for law school.
Shout out to all the Kappas.
Shout out to the Kappas.
Yes.
There was a gentleman there who was the biggest mover and shaker in Indiana. I mean, for 3 years, I had called his office and gotten meetings set up, coffee meetings. I just wanted to come and just pick his brain about stuff. He was a big lobbyist in the state of Indiana. And every time for 3 years, he counseled on me.
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm sitting there like, I'd never had that issue before in Tennessee because, I can pretty much get on anybody's calendar in politics. Right. Because I have a good reputation for working for good people.
And you've worked hard to build your name.
And this guy never got back to me. And I made a promise right then. I will never do that to anybody. If somebody wants to meet with me, particularly a young college student,
yes,
there's no way that I'm going to say no to meeting with someone who could probably get a nugget or two from me.
Yes.
And it may work out that you get a nugget or two from them. Like that's kind of how the mentorship thing works.
Because you can learn from anybody.
You can learn from anybody.
You really can.
And people have great ideas. It doesn't matter how old you are. So like when I decided that, I take so many coffee meetings because I can't afford to do lunch meetings with everybody. And it's hard to get an hour to like for just, randomly. So if I do a speaking engagement and I say about how important it is to network and to talk, then you got to walk the walk. You know, like I said, connect with me on LinkedIn.
Yes.
And then let's connect at some point. I'm like, wow, I'm not able to go to 15 lunches. So I started going to coffee meetings. I don't drink coffee, but I do drink tea.
It's a sacrifice.
And I can afford to buy everybody a cup of coffee that
yes,
they go with.
That's true.
You can't, you could really spend a lot of money. And, Nashville lunch prices are expensive.
Ooh, Knoxville too.
Oh, I love Gus's, by the way, here.
Yes.
Gus's
is good.
is great, but I probably would be at Gus's every day if I lived here. But my point is this right here. If I can't give back to someone, knowing that I've had some great mentors, fantastic mentors, then I'm not doing my job. I'm not doing what I think that's disgraceful for you to benefit from someone who's poured into you and you be unwilling to pour into somebody else.
I'll tell you this. I believe there's two types of people. Givers and takers. And you chose not to be a taker. You chose, okay, I was fed, but now it's my time to feed. That's basically what you're saying, because it's like you had mentors that has built you up. What would it be like if you didn't feed someone else? If you didn't open that door for some young person that was just like you? Why say I want to make a difference if all I'm doing is taking? Do you agree with that?
Well, I definitely agree with that. So like this is this is perfect. I had a lunch meeting the other day with a dear friend, and he said something that stood out. Okay. He said, I'm so glad that we're able to have lunch. He said, I'm impressed with you. He's a little older than I am. Mm-hmm. But he said, I want to start this lunch meeting by asking you, what can I do to help you? He said, because every time I've interacted with you over the past couple of years, you go out of your way to help others. Mm-hmm. And he said, this young brother goes out of his way to help everybody, and it's a selfless act. So what can I do to help you? And that really, that's those good comments.
You don't get that often.
That was even better than him doing anything for me.
Exactly.
Just acknowledgement.
Yes.
And what I'll say, like the other part is similar to it. A gentleman called me one day, and I answered the phone, and I said, hey, what's going on? And we talked for about 5-7 minutes. And I said to him, I said, all right, now we've talked. I said, what can I do to help you? What you need? He said, I was just calling to say hello. Mm-hmm. I don't need anything.
But you wasn't used to that.
I said, but I'm just wired to always try to help somebody. And I realized at that moment that I need to unwire and not think that just because somebody's calling me that they need something. But in the role that I'm in, a lot of people call me when they need something.
Correct.
So I got to learn how to just have a little more discernment.
And you got to learn how to receive.
Yes.
I'll tell you this, the best thing to me is being a giver. I find joy in it. I love to see people smile. I love to make a difference. But the biggest thing my pastor and my husband had to pour into me, Yvonnca, you don't know how to receive. And so I would say to my pastor, I'm like, yes, I do. And he goes, no, you don't. He said, because it makes you feel uncomfortable. He said, when people want to give to you, you don't know how to receive. And so when he said that, coming from my husband, coming from my pastor, I was like, it does make me feel uncomfortable. Now, part of it, I wasn't exposed to that. For a long time, people didn't pour, and so sometimes when you get the phone calls like what you were talking about, is that you're in a position that people are constantly calling you because they need something. So it didn't feel normal to you that they were just calling to check on you. Right. They didn't need anything from you. And so...
And let me clarify this thing quickly, though.
Go ahead.
Like, the need something could be, hey, I'm looking for somebody's number. Mm-hmm. Or, like, it's not always like that.
Nothing big. Yeah, what you're saying is just needing something out of you. That you have to, you're asking you to give something. And I'll say this to you, learn how to receive and be okay with it. And I'll tell you at the beginning of receiving, it will make you feel so uncomfortable. It still makes me uncomfortable. But you give a lot. When I started researching you, because you were recommended to me that you would be a good interview. The person spoke and said, this would be a good interview because all that he does for others. Okay? When I started researching you and reading all the different things that you have accomplished, it was like, wow, looking at your age versus what you've accomplished, you've had to give something, your time. So it's time for you to receive. I hope you can take this from me. Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that.
Oh, God, use me. It's time for you to be rewarded in a spiritual way that God wants for you to see your works. You don't accomplish all of that, Alfred. I'm talking to you as a friend right now. Is that you don't accomplish all of that without a reward season. It's time for you to open your heart to your reward season, and for you to be able to see that everything that you've done, it was in God's plan, and it was for God to give you that reward season, and it is your season. Hear me when I tell you, you're going to call me and you're going to tell me, Yvonnca, do you remember this on the podcast? Because you can't do that much work for the body of Christ,
right,
and not have a reward season. Allow yourself to receive and allow yourself to see that He has so much more for you, but you have to open your heart up to that. And Leadership Tennessee is a path that you're going down, but you're touching so many people in Leadership Tennessee that probably has never said, hey, you just speaking to me that day, acknowledging me that day, or, making me feel good. You could have saved somebody's life. You could have stopped a lot of things just by speaking to them.
right.
So when you go back into leadership, when you leave here, I'll say this to you is open your heart for your reward season and understand that His plan is so great.
Bless you.
Tune in next Friday to part 2 of this great interview. Bye, guys.
Thanks for listening to Talkin' Tennessee with Yvonnca. Watch out for our weekly episodes from the first family of real estate, and check us out on the web, www.yvoncasalesrealestate.com. See our videos on Yvonca's YouTube channel, or find us on Facebook under Yvonnca Landes and Twitter @Yvonnca Landes. And don't forget to tell a friend about us. Until next time, Yvonnca signing off.